Hey there folks, this is Screen Watching, your weekly deep dive into the movies and the TV shows that are worth a damn of paying attention to. My name's Dan Barrett, I'm joined as always by my boy wonder Simon Foster. This week on the show, The Toxic Avenger. It's a reboot, a revamp, a reimagination of the classic trauma. Are they even budgeted enough to call them movies? I think we'll call them movies for the purpose of this. Is this movie actually going to capture a brand new generation of people who will fall in love with Toxie all over again? Or is it pandering to the exact same audience that would be more than happy watching a grimy, barely cinematic movie from 1984? Simon Foster's going to reveal all. Me, I'm taking a look at something at the other end of the spectrum. It is the very shiny, very new Thursday Murder Club. Great name. Does the name live up to, well, does the film live up to the name? There's only one way to find out, and that happens later in this podcast. What else have we been watching? Can I get a sentence out? No. What else have we been watching? Caught Stealing, the movie that I wish Simon was reviewing this week. He will discuss in some depth in this segment. And also EENIE MEANIE, film that it just begs for, a bit of cartoonish sort of, tomfoolery and words like peenie, which Simon may have dropped into conversation before we started pressing record. Me, I didn't write anything down for this section, so look, screw it, Simon. I said I wasn't going to do it, but Peacemaker Season 2, we're running it this week on the show. Folks, this is Screen Watching.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Simon Foster, I'm here mealy-mouthed. How are you?
Dan Barrett, struggling through sentences as only you can. I'm very well, sir. A busy week for me. Had my second go as an extra, beg your pardon, background actor this week. In a few months, you may see me in a two-shot with Joel Edgerton. I can't say anything else, but it was a fun day out there at the Silverwater Correctional Facility.
Not the first time you've been out at Silverwater.
No, not at all.
And I think we all have read the news coverage. Folks, Screen Watching, I'm excited to dive in, and look, there's only one thing I want to talk about this week, and it's not the Toxic Avenger, but that's where we start this podcast. Folks, here's a clip.
I'm a monster.
You're not a monster. Show him your good heart.
Hey, buddy, I'm your dad.
What the?
I wasn't even involved. But sometimes you gotta do something.
Oh boy, you can tell by that clip that this is not for the whole family. Although oddly over the years, the Toxic Avenger sort of became for the whole family. Wasn't there an animated series that they put out, like The Adventures of Toxie or something like that?
Thank you for stepping over the one thing I really want to talk about this
I
week.
knew it, I know.
Is animated series of Toxic Crusaders. But please, Simon, tell us about this movie.
I've been doing this long enough to know what your in points are, and it's old animated shows. So yes, I did tread all over that.
When my life peaked, circa 1991 through to the back
right.
end of 1991.
Well, funnily you talk about life peaking, because it was in 1984 when I was just year 11 in high school, and the VHS era was at its most fervent. I discovered The Toxic Avenger. In fact, it was a couple of years after that. It was probably a couple of years later when Roadshow Home Video released the original Troma quote-unquote classic. For those listening to us, you won't see me do the bunny ears there. It has clearly become the Troma Studios sort of alpha anti-hero. Anyone who saw the original will know that it was a grimy, gonzo, bloody affair. Never to be taken seriously at all. It was a totally nuts film about a nerd who falls into a vat of toxic waste, emerges as the Toxic Avenger, and goes around doing horrible things to people of questionable morals. Now, in this remake, and it's so difficult coming to a remake of a film like The Toxic Avenger because it holds such a unique spot in film, quote unquote, there's those bunny ears again, culture. But in this remake, they've updated it by making the lead character not a nerdy, skinny teen, but a little person called Peter Dinklage, who's a single father to Jacob Tremblay. They're not getting on. He's a stepdad. He's having trouble at work. He works for a big company owned by the scumbag billionaire Kevin Bacon. Gee, he makes a career out of doing good scumbag billionaires. He did it in that James Gunn film Super from a few years back. But in this one, He, as he's tried to steal money from his boss for a very worthy cause, Peter Dinklage gets thrown in a vat full of toxic waste and emerges as the Toxic Avenger. And I've got to say, he emerges in all his glory. There's some terrific makeup effects in this, and the director, Mackin Blair, who I didn't really know from other things. I know he's done some good work previously with some indie films, but this was his big sort of roll of the dice. He has absolutely hung on to the grimy, slimy sort of VHS era violence and comedy that we all came to love in the first film, and I think a lot of people are going to come to love in the second film. There's, like all good sort of horror comedies, there's a bit of a social subtext there. Clearly there's an environmental element because of all the waste that's being poured into the world by Bacon's character. There's the need for connection, regardless of appearance or social standing, that Peter Dinklage is trying to get on trying to establish with his son, Jacob Tremblay. But in every other regards, this is just a wacky, bloody, silly, good time at the movies. If you're going along to see this and you're completely familiar with the original Toxic Avenger, you'll be pleasantly surprised that the spirit and the energy is intact from the first film. There's a lot of humour, plenty of nods to the first film, but it still sort of maintains its 2025 relevance. It's one of the better action hero films I've seen this year. I got to say, I had a really good time.
Better than A Station Agent?
Well, he didn't have
very
a
similar
mop in the
movies,
station.
I'm sure.
Yeah, very similar movies for Dinklage. God, random call there. You're going back a long way. He's good in this, Dinklage. This is a film that had a lot of post-production issues. It was shot like 3 or 4 years ago. It actually premiered at the Toronto Midnight section back in 2023. And if you see a lot of the like IMDb listings and Rotten Tomato listings, it has it listed as a 2023 film, which is when it screened at those festivals. But it's been sort of in distribution limbo since then. But it's good that it's finally found its way to Australia and around the world.
Yeah. Very quickly, my history with the Toxic Avenger was that I saw the animated series as an 11-year-old. It's called Toxic Crusaders.
Yep.
It was a very sort of cutesy post-Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series that, if you asked me, I would tell you 100% only lasted for 13 episodes, and I'm almost certain that's right.
You never saw the original film or any of the sequels?
So, as an 11-year-old, I was a big fan of this animated series, and I then went to the video store and rented out the latest Toxic Avenger movie, which at that point I believe was Toxic Avenger 3. There's a scene which I believe opens the movie, so goes my memory from being an 11-year-old many decades ago. Oh, gosh. My recollection is it opens with Toxie fighting some punks that take over a video store, and there was a very graphic scene, and correct me if my memory is hazy on this, but I believe he does grab a punk at one stage and feeds his hand into a VHS player, and you see on a TV screen that it's connected to his hand going across what I presume is a white background and seeing his hand mulched into all sorts of mush.
A scene that was referenced extensively in the film Video Heaven, which I mentioned to you previously, was the 3-hour look at, and yes, that scene does feature heavily in that, and you're exactly right, it was the third of the films and was all set in a video store. So
can confirm, probably shouldn't have had that movie rented out for me by my parents.
Absolutely not. In fact, it explains an awful lot about your antisocial behaviour as it stands today.
It really does, but I have some, and honestly, I may have turned the movie off at that point because I have no further recollections of that film. But I have seen the original movie and thought it was perfectly fine for what it was. But I'm not a big Toxie fan. It's fine. I appreciate that it's out there, and I'll watch this at some point. But
there was a whole lot of back and forth about how the original Toxie was first released as a cut version by Roadshow Home Video. I was working at Roadshow Home Video at the time and got to see the uncut version. I completely understand why it was cut for its release, because there's a couple of scenes in the uncut version which are just total 80s gore. And I got to say, that kind of is referenced a bit in the new one as well. They lean into the practical effects a lot more than the CGI stuff, which is fun to see.
Yeah, look, I'm surprised that it's taken this long to reboot the movie, considering superhero culture since, 2009 with Iron Man. It seems like this is the sort of thing that was screaming to be remade. The fact that it's taken, so long for the 2003 production of this to happen, 2023 production of this to happen. But then also for it to be sitting on a shelf for like 2 and a bit years is madness.
Yeah,
madness,
it's crazy.
Simon.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw to the Thursday Murder Club clip.
There she is. Joyce, are you a nurse?
Bang on target.
I'm Elizabeth. Would you take a look at that for me, please?
God.
'Tis a lot of blood.
Would you care to join us to discuss things further?
Who is us?
I'm sorry, how rude of me. We're the Thursday Murder Club.
I keep wanting to call this the First Thursday Murder Club, and I don't know why.
Murder Club. It's a tough selection of words to try to get out of the mouth. I'm keen to see how you handle it, what with your stumbling and stuttering over the English language.
Exactly. The best way for me to do this, Simon, is if I try to affect some sort of 1920s sort of Cockney thing and call it the Thursday Moida Club. I think that would go very well. But look, Thursday Murder Club, this is the Netflix TV adaptation, or movie TV adaptation, of the Richard Osman book series that has been fairly popular in the UK.
Yes.
Richard Osman we know as we'll call him a co-host on the British version of Pointless. He's the bespectacled fellow. I don't think he's on the show anymore. Simon, you're the Pointless guy.
Yeah, no, he left a couple of years ago. He now does these Osmond's House of Games things where which is really kind of boring television, but I can imagine a whole lot of plumby Brits sitting around thinking it's great.
Yeah, and look, I'll say Richard Osman is a person that fascinates me, and I think I really want to like Richard Osman and find him to be incredibly charismatic, but I just don't. I find him to be a complete bore of a human being, and
because you're no fan of his podcast. You've said previously that you think that thing he does with that lady is kind of twatty.
Yeah, Marina Pryor, and it is a bit twatty. Okay. So that's a very good way to refer to it. Yeah, so the problem with that is that let's not even do that. Simon, look. Here's the thing, I find him to be a very boring person. I was kind of interested to know what his book series was like, as they are very popular books. I have to say, if the books are anything like the movie, it is a complete distillation of the author as text.
Uh-oh.
My gosh, Simon. My gosh. Can I take you back to, I think, a season 1 episode of a very popular animated series from the very late 90s called South Park?
Here we go.
There is an episode, yeah, there we go. There is an episode where Stan is talking to his grandfather, who I believe wants to be euthanized, and he puts him into a dark room and just plays him EENIE and says, "This is what my life feels like. Don't you?" Like, and it's basically a way to say, "I think that I should be euthanized."
Okay.
That is how I felt watching the Thursday Murder Club.
Oh my God.
The problem with this movie is that it is incredibly slight. There's a trend in television to have cozy murder mysteries, and this fits into that bucket. The problem is it's just so flat, and there's nothing resembling a quirky, interesting, engaging character in this, that the whole thing is just an exercise of, like, I get it, it's fine to be sort of playing in the background. If I'm a very undemanding viewer, I might find a couple of thrills in the various obvious surprises that are depicted throughout the thing. But there was literally one scene where it came alive, and I was like, you know what, that's kind of funny. And it's this shtick of... Look, let me explain the premise of the
yes, let's do that.
thing to you, and then we'll get to what was the 10 seconds of enjoyment I had while watching this feature film.
God.
So, look, the premise of it is that you've got 4 older people. You've got Helen Mirren, Pierce Brosnan, Ben Kingsley, and Celia Imrie, an
These
actress
are all quality actors.
Yeah, and if you don't know Celia, you certainly know her by face. You've seen her in so many things over the years. The other 3, very much name actors, and directed by a gentleman named Chris Columbus, who I think we all recognise. So, like, there's talent in this. Thomas Newman does, like, the musical composition.
God, Netflix have thrown their money around. This was made by Netflix or one of their acquirings?
I mean, it was made for Netflix. Production company is Amblin Entertainment.
Oh, wow.
Jennifer Todd Pictures, Maiden Voyage.
Is primo Hollywood kind of stuff. So
yeah, like
Osmond's cleaning up.
It's a proper production.
Yeah.
Okay, and the premise of this one is that you've got these 4 people who all live together in a retirement home. It's not a... It's not a poverty-stricken retirement home. This is definitely upper-class, sort of fancy, wealthy people in the prime of their lives. Prime-ish, prime adjacent of their lives. Anyway, 3 of them, and then joined by Celia as the, plot mechanisms of the first, 7 minutes of the film unravel. Each Thursday they gather to solve a cold case. And as the events of this film transpire, it is, for the first time in the history of this club, a time where they're actually going to investigate a hot murder case, one that has just happened, regarding someone who is the owner of the property that the retirement home's on. Now, there's a quirky...
The Murder, She Wrote crowd would be going crazy for this.
Yeah, look, there's a quirky element to this, which is that on the ground there are llamas, or alpacas, I never really quite know the difference, who are there,
we're going to get letters from the llama people.
Yeah, it was kind of like a way for them to sort of deal with stress by having these sort of lovely animals. But they kind of have the run of the property, and there's a very funny insert shot where it's like an establishment shot of the building at one point, and you see it from quite a distance, but you see like in the foreground because it's at quite a distance, some little llamas just sort of running across. And it's very charming and funny, and if the film did more of those sorts of like little nods to the world they've created, it would be so much more engaging than it is. But instead, it's a film that goes by the numbers in terms of its murder investigation. It introduces characters and doesn't really give us a reason to want to be invested in the characters, to cheer the characters with their wins, to commiserate their setbacks. None of that's really happening. It's basically characters gets introduced. Yeah, we get the idea of it. Occasionally they'll throw you a bone, and I use that phrase with very much tongue-in-cheek. There's a funny scene where there's a character who's doing a not quite nude drawing, like life drawing, as they're having a chat with her. But you see that she has drawn something which wasn't actually visible from the model that was wearing something more in regards to like a little pants.
Penises with you. I don't know.
Look, I didn't say the word, but yeah, I think a lot of our screen culture is very penis heavy. But anyway, that's kind of funny, but like these are like, again, tongue-in-cheek, small little moments, and they don't add up to a whole. Basically, this is very disappointing. It is sleep-inducing, and I did wake myself up on the couch a number of times while watching this movie. There's an audience for this. It's not me, and it's not anyone who actually wants something that resembles entertainment.
Good Lord, Dan Barrett bringing the big guns for you. Look at that.
You know what? No, good cast.
Yes, this is why I'm surprised you're so down on it, because Brosnan, Mirren and Kingsley together, I mean, that's a lot of scenery to be chewed.
Look, Brosnan's always welcome on my screen. Ben Kingsley, he's fine. Loved him in The Sopranos. That was about it.
Soprano. Gandhi.
So, and if
he
you've
was
seen
Gandhi, Dan. Gandhi. Well, he was Dandy, Gandhi.
Look, I'm not going to get into an argument with you about Gandhi, okay? It's not going to happen.
I'm not a Gandhi fan. It beat E.T. for the Best Picture Oscar, and that's one of Hollywood's great mistakes, but there we go.
What I will say is there's a sequence right at the beginning of the movie where each of them talk about what they did before they went into the retirement home. Right. And Pierce Brosnan's like, I was like a union organizer. And Ben Kingsley's, I'm a psychiatrist. And Helen Mirren's like, I was involved in international affairs or something. And in a better movie where you've actually got human characters, what that would end up being the reveal would be that we'd find out she was maybe just like a stay-at-home wife, and so she was kind of living vicariously through her husband, or there's some sort of sad story, which is why she'd make up a cover of International Affairs. But no, she was actually an MI13. MI13? What do you call it?
MI5.
MI5, and she's got some skills to pay the bills. And
skills to pay the bills. I'm putting that on a t-shirt.
I think it's a used phrase, Simon.
Okay.
It's like, come on, just like you don't have to have your characters save the world. They don't have to be super spies. Like sometimes people can be real people, and that in storytelling is often way more effective than what we have here.
Okay. We've decided this week of the two things we're reviewing, The Toxic Avenger is the better movie, and I can't believe I'm saying those three words.
Let us move on. What else have you been watching? And follow-up question, why is Caught Stealing not your featured movie of the week?
Because I wanted to bring sort of a thematic component to my What Else Have You Been Watching. The two movies I'm putting in the What Else Have You Been Watching pile this week are two movies that are junk. They're junk movies. They're meant to be junk movies, and you're meant to enjoy them on the junk movie level. One is an out-and-out junk movie. It's called EENIE MEANIE. This is the one that's on Hulu / Disney Plus, wherever you might be watching this. It stars the wonderful Samara Weaving, one of Australia's most talented and undervalued actresses, as a getaway driver. This is basically...
Sorry, is this Ready or Not Samara Weaving?
That's exactly who it is, yes. She is a getaway driver of some skill. She spent the last 8 months trying to get her life in order without the dirty guy she's been hanging around with most of her life, but is drawn back into his world and put in a position where Andy Garcia has total control over him, and they've got to rob a casino. So right there in that synopsis, you see this is junk. this could have been made in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s with any other sort of actress or actor stepping into a role like this. Certainly in the late 90s, 2000s, this is a sort of a Pulp Fiction type crime, Guy Ritchie type crime thing, which makes this feel a little bit anachronistic, a little bit out of date, but with her in the lead, it's perfectly fine. Now, with Caught Stealing, you've got Elvis himself, Austin Butler, paired up with Zoe Kravitz, being hunted by a pair of Hebrew assassins played by Liv Schreiber and Vincent D'Onofrio, by some Russian bad guys who punch first and ask questions later, by a crooked cop played by Regina King, and it's directed by Darren Aronofsky. So everything about this sort of screams, why are this sort of pool of talent living in a world that's very grimy, late 90s, New York, I think it's New York, might be San Francisco, no, it's definitely New York, and playing in these really sort of standard genre tropes that you might expect to see and prop up a movie like EENIE MEANIE, not a big studio, Oscar-worthy, heavy cast and crew like Caught Stealing. And the big difference is that Darren Aronofsky takes this very seriously. He gets the grime right. It looks great. He and Butler even get the characters right in that they go through a period of getting themselves in trouble, then going through some personal growth to get out of that trouble, and finally outsmarting, as you expect in these things. That's not a spoiler. He's the movie star. He's always going to come out ahead in a movie like this. But it also takes some really dark and nasty turns as you expect someone like Aronofsky might take. And it sort of sucks the fun out of the movie. I don't want to give away too much. At the end of the first act, this horrible thing happens, and you realise that all the fun has suddenly gone from the movie because there's this dark shadow hanging over everybody involved. So while this also wants to be a Guy Ritchie / Tarantino type of genre thriller, it also wants to be something else, and I think maybe it falls somewhere in the middle and isn't quite anything of note. But there's so much to recommend it, and yet so much to say it maybe didn't quite get right. I'm still mulling over what I think of Caught Stealing, because it's certainly its own beast, but I don't know if it successfully sort of captures what it's trying to be. So, but certainly well worth seeing with that cast and him behind the camera.
The film I've heard this likened to is Scorsese's After Hours.
Interestingly enough, Griffin Dunn has a support part in Caught Stealing.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a coincidence.
That doesn't seem like a coincidence. The other thing you realise very quickly is that it's very hard to recognise the people in this. They're all playing against type, especially Schreiber and D'Onofrio as the two sort of orthodox Hasidic Jews who are under the full makeup and the beard and the
Look, you say that, but D'Onofrio, I feel that he's an actor who definitely disappears into quite a number of roles. Sure. And if you ask me what D'Onofrio looks like, I don't think I could tell you with 100% certainty.
Yeah, that's a fair call. So to get back to your point about After Hours, arguably my favourite Scorsese movie, and I know that's saying a lot, but I can also say unequivocally that I've watched After Hours a lot more than I've watched Goodfellas or Raging Bull or Cape Fear.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
If that's your favourite movie, have you actually seen all of the others? Because
I've seen
I have to
everyone.
Say, After Hours is fine.
After Hours is full of a dark, nightmarish energy and a lot of humour, and it's the humour that's missing from Caught Stealing. This is because he's also a recovering alcoholic who, in a terrible fight, loses one of his kidneys, so he can't drink alcohol anymore. And that sort of weighs over this film as well. Butler is very, very good. He's in every scene of this film. And he's certainly got the movie star looks. He has a couple of very sort of deeply emotional moments. Whereas, like I said, this is clearly people trying to find a bit more in a kind of a standard crime thriller sort of storyline, and they do to some degree, but not to the ultimate degree. So that's probably what I've got to say about Caught Stealing. Definitely worth seeing, though.
I'm very interested in seeing this. I just haven't had the opportunity, and I don't think I'm going to get to this weekend. I've got the chance to go and see one movie, and I am making it a retro screening of To Live and Die in LA, which is playing at the Ritz this weekend.
I might go and do that myself. My friend Bryn Tilley is head of the Dark Nights Film Festival. He's presenting that, and he's very excited about it. I've seen it half a dozen times. It's a great film, but I've never seen it on the big screen, so I might go along to that as well.
Well, I guess I might have a little date with you on Saturday night.
You and your frozen bloody soft drinks. Does the Randwick Ritz do frozen drinks? You may not. You won't be happy at all.
Not sure. I only get the frozen drink if I can get a frozen vanilla Coke.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think they do that. So
heard it here first, people.
Yeah.
What else have you been watching?
Look, I was going to wind things out with a very quick discussion about Peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Peacemaker, look, we also season 1, I think... Sorry, my dog's just barking. Let's just let my dog finish. So I thought we'd wind out this week's podcast with a discussion about Peacemaker Season 2. Season 1 came and went a couple of years ago. I think it was a lot more broadly watched than I expected. It's a show which, broadly, I think people were really into. I went and saw the Superman 2025 feature film in the cinemas a couple of times, and every time that I saw the movie, there's a brief, like maybe 4-second appearance by John Cena as the titular Peacemaker, and the audience erupted into loud applause every time. So, like, I think that there's people who are very keen to see this character.
Oh, I was a huge fan. Yeah, look, I was a big fan of the first Light.
Yeah, I like the first Light. You've seen the first episode back. As we record this, there's a second episode just waiting to have the play button pressed on it. What I found interesting about the series return is that between seasons, we've found there's been some structural changes at Warner Brothers in relation to their DC IP. And the idea is that they want to reboot their entire universe. They've made a new Superman movie, which is kickstarting it all. But that first season, written and directed by James Gunn, the co-president of DC Films, for whatever, I'm not sure what they actually term it. Co-president of that, the guy that wrote and directed the Superman movie, he's got a lot of skin in the game. And I don't think he wanted to say goodbye to that first season of Peacemaker, or the Suicide Squad movie that he made, which is also shoehorning into, the newfound version of the universe. But both those productions had ties to the previous version of the DC universe. So as the series has come back, it does two things. One, it tries to establish where Peacemaker sits in the new formatted DCU, to the point where the Previously On, which shows us clips from last season, is a clip from the season finale of season 1, replacing some of the characters in clips with actors from the new version of the DCU. Yes. So gone is Jason Momoa, gone is, that guy that played The Flash. Both of them are gone. Sorry, not guy, they, them, who played The Flash.
Well done.
Aside, you've instead got Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner replacing them. Mm-hmm. So we've got that. So suddenly we're in the new paradigm of the series. Cool, whatever.
As easy as that.
Rolling
and just
forward.
Like that, it's done.
There is also a plot point that's going to run through the first couple of episodes at least, if not the entire season, which is this idea of parallel worlds, and I think that's going to be something else that they do to try to, establish that
version of the multiverse.
Yeah. So look, we've got that happening. The other thing that I think Peacemaker Season 2 is doing, it is literally them writing a line in the sand. Bear in mind that Peacemaker isn't made by, it is, but it's not just Warner Brothers Television. The editorial oversight of Peacemaker is held by HBO. So this is an HBO production that we're seeing streamed on HBO Max. And I think with Peacemaker, they're very much out there with this saying, yes, if we are going to be making these big IP TV series, we are going to do it under the HBO brand and everything that stands for. And what that means is that Peacemaker has hit the screen with some very adult content. And I feel that this is them saying, HBO Max is not a place to get safe IP. This is going to have adult content. And if we're saying that it's adult content, it is going to go there. And more than any other episode of Peacemaker, this season return, which should be the safest of all of them, any other studio, any other network, if they were going to go off the back of a family-friendly production like Superman 2025, they would play it safe. They do not do this. In the opening episode, we see our hero, our anti-hero, the titular Peacemaker, he's doing blow while he's at an orgy, and the orgy isn't, tastefully covered people in the background or blurred in a distance or anything like that. What you're seeing is bums, everything on the other side of the body, upper, lower, inside out, upside down. It is a full feast for Feast for the senses, Simon.
And I made I saw in some of the coverage of that, because one of the first people who, lays themselves upon John Cena as the Peacemaker is a dude. So and there was a lot of coverage of how in the comics the Peacemaker and that character was bisexual. So that's certainly dealt with in that orgy scene as well. Because
they did have a devil's threesome in the first season of the show as well.
Yeah, that's sure. Yeah, that's right.
But certainly, like, he is very much seen to be bisexual in this. It's all on. But it very much was them waving a flag around saying, look, this is an HBO production through and through, and HBO Max is, as defined by this hour of television, the place to go if you want to see something which is not safe television by any means.
On top of all of that, it's pretty cool. We kind of dug it. It was a good hour of television.
Pretty funny. Not quite as funny as I think last year quite often was.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think there was just a lot of heavy lifting it had to do and sacrificed a few moments for jokes to do that.
Yep, I agree. All right, Peacemaker's back, getting his gear off, doing some blow, having an orgy.
Yeah, good time had by all.
Good time had by all. Speaking of time, that hits the 30-minute mark of this podcast, which was our target going into it, Dan Barrett. I think we've all but settled on that, unless I keep talking in this way, and I could probably blow it out to 36, maybe even 40 minutes.
Giddy up. He who controls the edit controls the runtime.
Exactly.
Folks,
right.
This has been Screen Watching. My name, Dan Barrett. That guy, Simon Foster. We'll be back next week with more of this podcast. In the meantime, and the between time, if you want to find us, Simon Foster, where do people do that for you?
I'd prefer you go to the Substack, where you can find my Screen Space newsletter every week, getting lots of good coverage there from people who are commenting and saying they like it. In other big news, this week I dropped my Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival program. After 8 months of watching wacky films from all over the world, I've chosen 11 sessions worth of science fiction movies, which will be on October 3 to 5 at Event Cinemas George Street here in Sydney.
If people want to find me for the next couple of days, I suspect I'm going to be on the couch, because sometime between this morning to right now, I've suddenly started feeling very unwell, and hence why I'm really stumbling over so many words today, as my throat is closing up and my sinuses are doing all sorts of stuff I'm trying to prevent from happening. Also, people can check out alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter I do where people can see the latest news in streaming, TV, movies, whatever the case might be. If it's on your screens, it's there in the newsletter. This has been Screen Watching. We'll be back next week.